In this video, we will explore the cases of the oldest prisoners executed in the United States. Men who, after spending decades on death row, ultimately faced their sentence. From their crimes to their last words and final meal. Brandon Astor Jones. State, Georgia. On June 17, 1979, Roger Tackett was working as a manager at a Tenneco convenience store when he was attacked during a robbery. Brandon Astor Jones and Van Roosevelt Solomon entered the store with the intention of robbing it, which resulted in Tackett losing his life. Jones was arrested and, on October 17, 1979, was sentenced to death along with Solomon, who was executed in 1985 by electric chair at the age of 41. In 1989, a federal court ordered that Jones be resentenced after discovering that jurors had brought a Bible into the deliberation room. In 1997, he was once again sentenced to death. One day before his execution, he was offered a last meal. Jones did not make a specific request, so he was served the standard institutional tray, which included chicken and rice, collard greens, seasoned turnip greens, and cornbread. On February 3, 2016, Jones was executed by lethal injection in Georgia. Officials struggled for 45 minutes to insert the IV, initially attempting his left arm, then his right arm, and finally his groin, where a doctor successfully established the connection. He was declared dead at 12:46 a.m. When asked about his last words, Jones made no public statement. He accepted a final prayer and recorded a message for his family, according to the Georgia Department of Corrections. This was the first execution in Georgia in 2016 and the fifth in the United States that year. James Barney Hubbard. State, Alabama. In 1957, James Barney Hubbard was convicted of second-degree murder for the death of David Dockery in Tuscaloosa County. After spending 19 years in prison, he was released in 1976. A year later, he committed another crime. His second victim, Lillian Montgomery, was a 62-year-old store owner who had befriended Hubbard and supported him during his release. After his release from prison, Hubbard moved into her home, located next to the store she ran in Tuscaloosa. On January 10, 1977, Montgomery was found lifeless with 3 gunshot wounds, one in the face, one in the head, and one in the shoulder. Her gold and diamond watch, along with approximately $500 in cash and checks, were stolen. Hubbard claimed they had been drinking whiskey together and said Montgomery had taken her own life, even calling the police to report the incident. However, the evidence revealed it was a homicide. He was arrested shortly afterward and sentenced to death in 1977. He spent almost 3 decades on death row while presenting appeals, arguing that his advanced age and mental deterioration made his execution a cruel and unusual punishment. However, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected his appeal in a 5-4 vote, and Alabama Governor Bob Riley denied his clemency request. One day before his execution, he was offered a last meal. Hubbard requested 2 medium-boiled eggs, 4 slices of bacon, sliced tomatoes, fried green tomatoes, pineapple slices with mayonnaise, white bread, a banana, and a medium-sized V8 juice. On August 5, 2004, James Barney Hubbard was executed by lethal injection at Holman Prison near Atmore, Alabama. During the execution, his daughter, Barbara McKinney, watched from an adjacent room, while he maintained eye contact with her until he passed away. Jimmy Montgomery, the victim's son, also witnessed the execution and expressed his dissatisfaction because Hubbard did not say any last words or show any remorse. Hubbard was declared dead at 6:36 p.m., becoming the oldest inmate executed in the United States since the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976. John Albert Bolts. State, Oklahoma. On April 18, 1984, John Bolts ended the life of his 23-year-old stepson, Doug Kirby, in Pottawatomie County, Oklahoma. That night, after drinking, Bolts broke into his mother-in-law's house and had an argument with his wife. After she threatened to call the police, he left. Later, he called Doug, and after a brief conversation, the young man headed to his stepfather's trailer home. Soon after, Bolts called his wife and said, "I'm going to cut your dear boy's head off." Alarmed, she contacted the police. A neighbor testified that she saw Doug lying on the floor while Bolts was hitting him and shouting obscenities. He then stabbed him with a shiny object. Bolts claimed self-defense, stating that Doug tried to grab a weapon when he arrived at the house. However, a revolver was found in the victim's car, with no traces of blood, despite the seat being covered in it. On November 21, 1984, John Bolts was sentenced to death and spent over 21 years on death row. One day before his execution, he was offered a last meal. Bolts requested fried chicken, potato wedges, baked beans, coleslaw, an apple pie, and a roll. On June 1, 2006, John Albert Bolts was executed by lethal injection at the Oklahoma State Penitentiary. He was declared dead at 7:22 p.m. When asked about his last words, he said, "This is a moment of joy for me and a moment of sadness. It's a moment of joy because I know I'm going to a better place. It's a moment of sadness because I think about all the people involved who brought me here and what awaits them. It's been many years of pain, and now it all comes down to this." He also mentioned passages from the Old Testament, urging those present to read the book of Deuteronomy. Cecil Clayton. State, Missouri. In 1996, Cecil Clayton ended the life of Sheriff's Deputy Chris Castetter in Missouri. His case attracted attention due to a brain injury he had sustained in 1972, when an accident at a sawmill forced doctors to remove 1/5 of his frontal lobe. His lawyers argued that this damage caused a drastic personality change, affecting his judgment and making him mentally incompetent for the death penalty. Despite appeals based on his condition, the courts determined that Clayton understood his execution, making him eligible for capital punishment. The Supreme Court rejected his request for